In this quick video, I'm going to go over continued topics in vegan intermittent fasting. We're going to go over how much weight you can lose, go over some of the popular results videos you can find on vegan intermittent fasting and kind of what they're about, and then show you a few of the Reddit threads that you can follow if you're more of a reader and less of a video person. We'll go over who shouldn't try intermittent fasting, and then I'll show you a couple of bodybuilders who are vegans that include intermittent fasting in their methods. So starting off, how much weight can you lose? People say different things with the potato diet, which is not true fasting. You're just eating plain potatoes every day. They say you lose about a half pound a day on average when you do that for 3 to 5 days, which has roughly been my experience as well. With 24 or 36-hour fasts, a true fast, if you're supposed to eat 2,000 calories and you eat nothing at all and it's 3,500 calories to burn off a pound of fat, then by that math, you should be losing roughly about a half pound a day. So people will claim more for intermittent fasting, that you'll lose a pound a day of fat, and you may see that drop off the scale, but for longer term fasts that have been studied by Dr. Fung and others, it's closer to a half pound a day. And I'll look up that source for you and include it here. But I would take that with a grain of salt. Again, like with any kind of weight loss, you're going to be aiming for a half pound to a pound a week to be on the healthy, safe side. If you're within 20 pounds of your goal weight, if you have a lot more weight to lose, you can potentially lose a lot more than that. But the safe amount is more 1 to 2 pounds a week. And my personal experience, whenever I'm really on a roll, it's about a pound a week. It's really not much more than that. And even when you look in these case studies of results, you'll find a lot of them, even when they have a huge like 30-pound weight loss, it took them, if we're averaging 2 pounds a week, this one would probably be, about 8 pounds a month. I would assume that this took place over 3 or 4 months. Some of the other big weight loss stories you can find about intermittent fasting, that if you do the math based on what they say in their time frame, it ends up being that they lost about 2 pounds a week on the high end. So we'll leave it at that. It varies a lot. Remember, intermittent fasting is not some thing that's going to help you lose fat forever really quickly. It really is a tool that may help you if you have problems keeping to kind of consistent diets, because it's one that allows you to be a little bit more flexible in your eating. You don't have to stick to just straight up keto. So moving on to the vegan intermittent fasting YouTube videos, I've got a collection here of people that share their stories. And we can click through a few of these if it's possible, which I don't think we can because this is a little weird. So forgive my video. This is also kind of learning as I go. The first one is way over here. This woman, Rachel Ama, like she does this 1 week trial, and then she also gives you a follow-up story. She did a version of 16:8. She gives you a couple pictures, video elements of her making some foods, and talks a little bit more in depth about why she did it, and like her journey and what her results and stuff were. As you can see, there's not some huge transformation in the 1 month because she was already pretty close to her goal weight. But she's also one of the most popular videos that comes up on this topic, so you might have something you can learn from her. This other gentleman, he did 16:8, so true Q. He doesn't really show his foods, he just talks about them. And then he was pretty serious about it. He usually did, the 16:8 typical, but sometimes he would do a longer 20-hour fast, which is not hard to do because once you start practicing this, you'll find that it's pretty easy to do longer fasts, because fasting is, I consider it similar to working out. You have to get good at it. So it's better to start with simpler things like 16:8, where you fast for 16 hours overnight and then you just eat all your food in an 8-hour window, or even a 12-12, and kind of build your way up to longer fasts. And this 16:8, it's pretty much what most of the people in these YouTube results videos did. 16:8 is really easy to follow, so it's a very common path. Other people do slightly more aggressive stuff like 24, and then others do even farther aggressive stuff. There are other examples out there in the intermittent fasting world of people who do like 3 full days a week of not eating at all, and they dropped a lot of pounds. However, they weren't necessarily vegan, so I didn't include them in this group here. But there's a lot of ways to do it. The easier way is 16:8. But that also is for people that are really good at keeping things up consistently. So we'll just go through the last ones real quick. Here's another one. She ate 2 meals a day. You can watch her story. It's thankfully one of the shorter ones. Some of these other ones, they kind of went on for a bit. And this woman lost 30 pounds, and her story is kind of cool because she takes you through everything, like going into veganism, the kind of how she changed and all the new foods that she learned about, and then she, ramped up her workout, and then she ramped up, tried fasting. So she, kind of did everything, and it's a little bit longer of a story, but she tells everything. So it's kind of a good one to watch and check out if you want to see all those different aspects of the story. And then this last guy here, another pushing it hard, 16-8, or sometimes 20 hours of fasting, 4 hours of eating. And he does similar to this other woman. It works for him with that plan to just eat 2 meals a day. So that's one of the things people like on 16-8, and it didn't work for me quite as much, is that it goes really well with people who like to eat 2 bigger meals a day, because you can have one early and then one, later in that 8-hour window, and then you've got everything you needed and you're done. And it's less meal prep and less time cooking and eating and all that kind of stuff. However, I would get too hungry waiting between the 2 huge meals. And if your work isn't like kind of a simple office job where you can definitely eat your lunch and then definitely eat your dinner at set times, if you're called here and there to do things and it kind of messes with that schedule, this may not work for you. So all those links will be included below in the bottom of the video, and also eventually when this gets transcribed into a blog post. I found a few Reddit threads that I wanted to share. Those of us, we want to read more commentary from multiple people rather than just individual result stories. Some of the more common ones were vegan fitness. They have a couple of threads that are pretty long on the intermittent fasting topic. Plant-based diet is a big sub-thread on Reddit, and they do have some intermittent fasting topics as well. And here's a link to that. And then this last one I found was just an intermittent fasting sub-thread that has like some vegan questions. And you can check that one out at the end. But that one had the least amount of comments. So, and all in all, these were not too crazy long, 29 to 50 something comments in the thread. But you can follow through and gain you'll gain a lot more individuals' results that are just typed up in text without, someone who's willing to do like a full video and show their face, which clearly I'm not showing. I'm just trying to get across a lot of information. I'm not as photogenic as some others that are making these videos. Okay, moving on to the next topic, who shouldn't try intermittent fasting. This is just a quick thing, and I'll go through each one of these. If you have an eating disorder, certain types of intermittent fasting, like the ones where you do a full 36-hour fast and you kind of blasted through or saved up a whole bunch of calories. So in some minds you could, you go the next day or two and eat a whole bunch extra. And if you're not careful with some types of intermittent fasting, it can lead to a bit of an eating disorder, because you can waffle back and forth between eating nothing and eating a lot. So that's kind of a mixture. That's essentially a form of bulimia in a way, if you think about it. So you can just try it. Try the 16-8, try a 24-hour fast, try a 36-hour fast, and see how you respond. Do you find yourself, eating a bunch more food to make up for it and you don't really get anything out of it? That's what happened to me on the 24-hour fast. I would do the fast, I'd be all proud, and then I'd eat either a big dinner that night or something too much the next day. And if I looked at my average calorie throughout the week, I wasn't gaining anything. So for me, the intermittent fasting that I end up following is just a 36-hour fast every now and then, and I consider it kind of like a spiritual thing as well as kind of a body detox. While I'm doing that, it's breaking down all the messed up proteins and other parts of my body that don't need to be there, and so the body's kind of cleaning itself out because it has nothing else to eat. So I try and expand my definition and desires of intermittent fasting when I do it, and I do it sporadically. I've tried the 16-8, but I find that life gets in the way too much and events pop up and you don't want to miss out. And 16-8 is fun and a lot of people do it. However, it's the consistency of it makes it a little bit difficult. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. It's about eating disorders. 16-8 is more for the consistent non-eating disorder people, whereas the kind of just random fasts here and there can lead to problems. Diabetic, pregnant or breastfeeding, we'll just leave it as that. You know, fasting is not part of that time. Diabetic, there's certain times where, like, if you're going to do some kind of fasting protocol, you need to do it with your doctor. So if you're heavily overweight and you've got a lot of weight to drop, or if you're diabetic, or have some other kind of health condition, you're going to want to bring your doctor's guidance in. If you even think it might be an issue, you just do it with a doctor. You can find a doctor that's fine with fasting. You'll have to get to know your doctor, or maybe like work with a separate one specifically for this. There are a lot out there, like Dr. Fung and others, that have like whole centers to basically guide people through fasting, to help them with diabetes and other disorders. This is not what I do. I can't help out with this kind of stuff because I'm not a doctor. I know my dad recently got bariatric surgery and lost a whole bunch of weight, and he had a new health issue appear, and they felt like it could be because he lost too many pounds too quickly. I think he lost like 100 pounds in just like 2+ months, or just a few months, and that does a heavy toll on the body. Going back to up here, how much weight can you lose? Maybe it's not a bad thing to only be losing half a pound a week. That sounds pretty weak, but if you do it consistently, it's going to be a really healthy way to turn your body into the kind of body that you want, without causing all these undue stresses. If you're trying to lose 2 pounds a week, the other quoted number, that's hard. You have to have a deficit of 7,000 calories. Like, that's the equivalent of not eating for maybe 3 to 4 days of the week. How can that be healthy? That's very stressful on the body. So anyways, and then lastly, I put in the hangry. I don't even know why I put this in there. Sometimes when this is a silly one, because when you find that you first start fasting, you might find that it affects your mood in a bad way. Like, you get angry quicker, and you get hungry, and it really affects you. But again, consider it like a workout. Do smaller ones, and then as you work up to it, all that stuff melts away. So if you initially think that you have issues with getting too angry or getting too hungry and being mean to others, or it affects your work, just start smaller and work your way up to it. Let's move on. This is a good topic: vegan, intermittent fasting, and bodybuilding. So I found a couple of individuals that talk about their stories. John Venus actually has a whole YouTube platform that I should have included as well. And you can follow him, and his videos are great. I highly recommend him. He is a big time vegan bodybuilder, and there is his picture in this little thing. So this is, you can check this out. The link will be over there. This is a kind of an interesting, highly ad-filled interview that this organization did with John. And if you dive deep into here, he talks about how he does 16/8 intermittent fasting, in addition to a lot of the other stuff. You can learn a lot about him in his YouTube videos, or reading this article where they go into all these questions about his background and what he does and what kind of workouts he does and so on and so forth. But he uses intermittent fasting. When you go through all these other examples, you'll find that, like, you can find examples of vegan bodybuilders that use it, and then lots of vegan bodybuilders that don't. Like, if you even go to this first article, that's the #1 on Google when you try and search this topic, even this person only brings up vegan intermittent fasting if you're having trouble keeping the calories down. Because for the bodybuilders, the bigger focus is, like, a meal plan that works, that doesn't slowly build you up with fat. I don't have a link to it right now, but if you go to John's YouTube, you can kind of do a search, and he does this nice kind of testimonial of when he was gaining a whole bunch of quote unquote like weight, really just fat on top of his gigantic muscles, because he was just eating out at vegan restaurants too much, and the food was not his typical kind of carefully designed macros meal plans. And it was delicious, and he had fun, but he gained a lot of fat, and he had to turn it around, and he did that by going back to meal plans, not necessarily by intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting for, like, all these bodybuilders is kind of like icing on the cake. And even when you look at all these other individuals, like, she starts pretty thin, she's pretty thin, this other guy, well, she lost 30 pounds, but that probably took a while. A lot of the examples you find, especially people who are vegan and they just do the 16/8, they really just lose a few pounds and they tone up. You know, they get from, you know, perfect, like okay, to a little bit toner. So it's, again, it's like icing on the cake. It's adding a little bit of extra calorie loss that if you find fasting fun and you enjoy it, that might be a more interesting way or an easier way for you to kind of hit those calorie targets you have for the week, rather than trying to keep to some strict meal plan. But if bodybuilding and gaining muscle is a part of it, you know, monitoring your protein and like coming up with meal plans that include all the stuff that you need, is going to be key. I mean, the fasting is not going to help you build muscle too much. And to be honest, that's a totally different topic that I don't even have in here. There's an element of recovery where muscles are growing, where sleep is really important, and combining that with fasting could be really, really useful. But in general, the bodybuilding aspect, even what these people talk about, again, remember the #1 article that came up goes more in depth into vegan meal plans than they do in the fasting. You know, you just want to remember that the meal planning is going to be a lot more important than the intermittent fasting. But anyways, there are other examples of bodybuilders that use intermittent fasting. Here's another one. He's a vegan bodybuilder, and he uses fasting, and that might help tone him up a little bit. But even if you go to one of our favorites, Martin Burkham, who was the kind of the main person behind 16-8. He popularized it way back in like 2008. I recently bought his book a few months ago, and he released, I think, last year. And he doesn't even have a huge section on intermittent fasting within it. For him, like eating more protein and his like, you know, meal plan structure gets you far more of the results and his like super intense workouts than the intermittent fasting does. So I'm not trying to knock it if you're doing bodybuilding. Again, it's a tool that you can use to help you cut calories, and it could be a really useful part of a cutting phase in kind of a bodybuilding bulking to cutting. I plan to use it in my next cut, but I wouldn't consider it something that you have to do in order to, you know, achieve bodybuilding results that you want to do. But again, these are the 4 stories that I've included. They talk about their experiences with intermittent fasting and, you know, bodybuilding on vegan diets. And you can check them out right there. And they have videos and or just text. And this last one is what we're going to go into next, plant-based intermittent fasting meal plans. On Eternal Oak, I already have like a whole thing on intermittent fasting meal plans, but it didn't highlight vegan meals, and I'm going to do that now. And also in the thread of, you know, tying it to the vegan intermittent fasting bodybuilding, why don't we go ahead and do a like vegan intermittent fasting for bodybuilders meal plan bulking phase. So this one will focus on probably hitting a target of about 100 grams of protein a day, and I'm sure you can argue with me all that you want on that. But you know, after reading Brad Pylon, who's another big intermittent faster and bodybuilders, he wrote Eat Stop Eat, and he also wrote How Much Protein. He has a PhD in like you know, nutrition science, and he did a deep dive into the literature and research, and he found that you know, with protein, you only needed somewhere between 70 and 120 grams a day for the average size person, men and women, if they're trying to build muscle. It's way less than most people think. There's a lot of vegan bodybuilders out there, and I know I'm going deep into this tangent when I'm supposed to just be talking about what's coming next, but there's a lot of vegan bodybuilders out there that eat 200 grams of protein a day, and I think that's what they learned, that it worked for them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when I build this, I'm just going to build it that way. If you need to add more, you're going to add more protein powder. That's the easiest way to do it. Or you can make the meals larger, and then, you know, 3 meals that, you know, are about 33 grams of protein each. If you make them larger, you can easily hit higher, you know, protein targets, whatever you choose for yourself. And we should also include cutting phase one, because to be honest, I feel that is going to be a far more useful use of intermittent fasting with a bodybuilding meal plan. And so that'll be in the next video.